Welcome to Alternative Dog Moms Podcast. I'm Kimberly Gauthier, the creator of Keep the Tail Wagging. For the past 9 years, I've been blogging about raw feeding, pet wellness, and life as a crazy dog mom. I've seen massive improvements in my dog's health since I started raising my dogs naturally, and I'm passionate about sharing my experience to help other pet parents.
I'm Erin Scott. For the past 9 years, I've been researching and learning everything I can about healing cancer, allergies, autoimmune, and mystery illnesses in both my dogs and myself. And I can't wait to share with you everything I've learned on this journey. As the Alternative Dog Moms, we're bringing you all the latest dog health news that we're following and sharing the tips, tricks, and resources we learn along the way. Now, let's get started. Hello, Kimberly.
Hello, Erin. I have a fly in the room with me, and it's driving me crazy.
That's the worst.
At least it's not flying on me.
I walked into a whole mess of gnats or something this evening, and I was trying to make sure they didn't get in my mouth or anything, and I was
That's the worst.
Trying to get to my car, I was
Oh, that is the worst. Especially when you're when I used to ride my bike and I would see the little swarm of gnats.
Yeah.
It wasn't fast enough for me to veer off. And so I'm just closing my eyes and my mouth and, sort of ducking my head to just make it through. And of course I'm wobbling all over the place. So yeah, I understand.
Of course.
So how's Neno doing?
So thank goodness I can say he's doing better. And he's been doing better for at least the last 36 to 48 hours, which is really great because I was really getting worried for the last couple weeks. And I can tell it's kind of a long story, but I can tell it. We have time.
We certainly do.
So, Neno was about 2 when we adopted him in 2016. And when he came to us, unbeknownst to us, we just adopted him from the shelter, he had eaten a car tire. And he had pieces of a car tire and also a hard piece of plastic in his stomach. And we know this because about a month after we adopted him, he had to have, an obstruction removal surgery. So the poor guy, was on a lot of Pepcid and antacid things after that surgery. So the first one was not our fault. Fast forward to, it was the week of Christmas in 2017. So he had been with us for about a year and a half at that point. He ended up having a second foreign object obstruction removal surgery from pieces of a toy that he had eaten. It was funny when they gave us the pieces of the toy back that they removed. We recognized them. And Tim remembers he saw it in the yard and he thought that he had hit it with the lawnmower and that's why pieces of it were missing. It had never occurred to us that Neno would have eaten it. So over these past, however many years it's been since 2017, we have been extremely diligent about checking all of Neno's toys, the toys that he's allowed to have. We obsessively check if anything gets any kind of tiny little microscopic split in it, we are throwing it away. We are, all over this. So I remember very vividly before he had the second obstruction surgery, for a week, he had a lot of digestive issues. He was had a lot of reflux coming up and just all kinds of things that no matter what I did at that time wouldn't calm down. And then it progressed to the point where he couldn't keep any food down. And that's how we knew that, he had this obstruction issue again. So ever since that second surgery, he was on Pepcid from the end of 2017 up until the beginning of 2022.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And anytime that we had tried to take him off of it, he would start having reflux at night again. So when we started working with Dr. Medcroft, we had first initially just started with taking Penny to her because it's an hour drive from our house and Neno hates the car so much. So she didn't start seeing Neno till, a little while later after she had already started been seeing Penny for like a year or more. So with Neno, she was determined that we were going to get him off of this Pepcid. And over a period of time and trial and error, we did. So ever since like the spring of 2022, he's been off the Pepcid. And that felt like this amazing victory to finally get him off that medicine. So one of the things that we were doing for him for the last probably 2 years is using this Chinese herbal formula that we get from our vet. I've been looking all over the internet to see if you can get it anywhere else, but it's like only through like Chinese veterinary medicine places that you can order it. And it's called chamomile and yam, and it's this liquid. And he gets like a milliliter of the liquid, and then I always put a little bit of goat milk in the bottom of his bowl so that'll entice him to lick this stuff up. So it's just a little bit of goat milk, just enough to maybe fill like the bottom of his dog bowl. So it's just this tiny little amount. So every night before bed, he gets this, and almost without fail, he has not had any problems with reflux for over the last like year and a half now. So about 3 weeks ago, we are having a perfectly normal Friday night. We give him his goat milk with his herbal stuff. And it almost seemed like he like sucked it up too quickly. And he was kind of like started like hacking and coughing afterwards. Like maybe he had like gulped down a bunch of air with it. And ever since then, like literally constantly, he's just like had like constant reflux around the clock. That first night was so horrible. He was like drooling and wanted to go out and eat grass in the pouring down rain. And he hates the rain. So that was like how I knew he really wasn't feeling well. And I remember Tim was trying to like rub his chest, and he had let out this big burp. And it's like, I've never heard that dog burp. Like he never burps, he never farts. Like he's like, always pretty good. And I mean, just literally around the clock, you could constantly hear something would be coming up in his mouth, and he'd be swallowing it back down. Mm-hmm. And all night it would go on. And sometimes this loud stomach gurgling would be happening. And so I was trying everything that first weekend, like Tums and Pepcid and Gas-X and like all the things that I could think of to try to calm his stomach down. And when it was like Saturday, Sunday, and we're not getting any better, I'm like, all right, let me call the vet. So she was actually concerned at first that he could have bloat. And she actually taught me something that I didn't know. So when Neno had that second obstruction surgery, they actually did a procedure that's called a gastroplexy, where they actually like sew his stomach lining like to his insides. So that way he could never have that like potentially fatal issue where they get bloat and their stomach like twists. Yeah. Right. I didn't know dogs can still bloat without having that stomach twist. Mm-hmm. And so she was concerned that that could be what was happening. So she was telling us some different things to do. I went and picked up an herbal formula from her. We were like walking him constantly to try to like get things moving in his system. We started doing smaller meals. I immediately switched over to doing like a gently cooked food because I didn't know if that would like be easier on his stomach. Mm-hmm. We were doing like smaller meals. So he was, instead of getting like 2 meals a day, we were like making it like 4 meals a day. So it was a little less. So these were kind of the initial things we were trying, and like nothing's working. Mm-hmm. And then I started adding in more Pepcid because I was like, if it's reflux, let's just try the Pepcid and see if that helps. And it wasn't even really helping. And then that has made me really nervous that there was something else going on. And of course, in the back of my head through all of this, I'm like, oh my God, what if he has another obstruction? Yeah. And this is just like how it started. And I think that we're at the point now where we don't think that's the case. But I still have a terrifying fear in the back of my mind that he could have like a tumor or something that's in there that's pushing on something and causing all of this. So, you know me, I'm going into problem solving mode. I'm like, I got to have a plan. I got to figure this out. So I actually did a session with an animal communicator, and she was saying that she thought that it was excess acid and that it was just this reflux issue. she wasn't getting anything underlying, but obviously, still go check it out. So then I did a session with Kezia, who is our emotion code person, and she does another form of it called body code, which again, it kind of works with like the pendulum and like muscle testing. And she was getting that that basically it was an issue where he needed to be detoxed, and that there had been like something wrong in his food, like not that the food was bad, but maybe that something with the animals wasn't right. I don't know. That was kind of what she was getting, but she was saying detox. Then I talked to Poppy and we sent over more eye photos. And so she was actually comparing the eye photos that we looked at the night when we had her on, and then these photos. And the night that we had talked to her on the podcast, she had said there was something like with his gut that looked slightly toxic, and she wasn't sure if it was getting better or getting worse. Well, that area had gotten so much bigger.
Oh, wow.
In these last 2 months. Yeah. And so she's also saying detox. She had recommended a homeopathic formula. And so I have, for detox, I brought it with me while we were recording so I can make sure to call it the right thing, Glacier Peak Holistics Super Cleanse. And so this is like a zeolite type product. And I've always been slightly hesitant to use it because you have to be really careful about how you time out everything else that you're doing, because it's kind of like activated charcoal. It can like suck everything else out of the system that you're trying to do. So if I'm trying to keep him on the herbs and trying to keep him on all the other things, I don't want, so that's been like my juggle. I've been using my dog health journal to plan everything out about how and when I'm giving him things. So I think that the super cleanse is what started moving him in the right direction.
Yeah. So do you, like when you're saying about the jungling, is it basically technically supposed to be like clear everything else out of the diet except for the food and give them this?
Yeah, like you can't give it like within 2 hours, I think, of anything else. And so it's like, well, he's got to take his thyroid medication and he's got to take that on an empty stomach. And then he's got to take all these, those other things. And our vet had prescribed sucralfate. I think I'm saying that right. And you're supposed to do that like an hour after they eat. And that is helps coat the lining of their digestive system. So it's like they give it for ulcers. And with him having had so much reflux, she wanted, to make sure we were like protecting that. He hates getting that. You have to like dissolve this like pill and make this chalky liquid and then do like an oral syringe into their mouth. Oh my God, he hates it so much. He like runs and hides. We feel like we're torturing him every time we do it.
Aww.
And so I'm like trying to like time out. Well, he's got to get his thyroid medicine. I want to still keep him on the herbs, but I can't give this at the same time as the herbs. And I have to give the sucralfate an hour after that. And it's like, there's only so many hours in a day when I'm at the office, and it's been a juggle. And then I've also added in some milk thistle, some coconut oil, and this homeopathic formula that Poppy had suggested. So ever since, it's Tuesday night, I would say ever since like Monday morning, we noticed that he's been feeling better, like noticeably better. Yeah. Normally it's like that 5, 6, 7 a.m. when things seem to get the worst for him, and he starts like having the worst reflux and gagging and coughing and like stomach noises and stuff. And so we noticed, yesterday morning he didn't have any of that. That's a good sign. And then last night he like took these really good poops. And last night I came home and he wasn't constantly swallowing. That was like the first thing I noticed, and we were so excited. And then last night he got zoomies around the house. I was like almost in tears. And then a little while later, we hear like this crashing noise. And we're like, oh my God, what was that? He had been trying to get like his tug toy out of his toy box, and he knocked the whole toy box over. And we were like just so excited that he was like digging in the toy box, because we haven't seen him do that in a while. So I'm like, oh God, I think we're finally moving in the right direction, because I'm exhausted.
I bet. It is like the best feeling when your dogs are feeling better. I mean, gosh, it's such a huge relief when they're like, because you can't ask them, they can't tell you.
I know.
And ultimately everything is you're just throwing stuff at the wall, hoping that it'll stick. And it's so hard. Like for me, I have to force myself to do things one at a time, because I will just want to throw everything into my dog's throat, because it's like, this whole mixture is going to kill you. And it's just like, no, we're not going to do this. We're going to just do one thing at a time. And I'm relieved. I'm so happy for you.
Hey, quick question for you. Are you someone who wants to be fit, healthy, and happy? And what if I told you could get your dream body by simply just listening to a podcast? I'm Josh.
And I'm KG, and we are the hosts of the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast.
Listen, we get it. Fitness isn't easy. Carbs, no carbs.
Just stop, okay? It doesn't have to be that complicated. And that's why we made this podcast. We get straight to the facts so you can become your best you.
So the way to check us out is click the link in the show notes or search Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast on any of the major podcast platforms. We'll see you soon.
I am too. We still have an upcoming series of x-rays and ultrasound, though, just because we were already moving in that direction, and I just kind of need the peace of mind at this point. And, God forbid he could start feeling worse tomorrow. I don't know. But it's like these last 2 days, he just, like this morning, he popped right up out of bed and started trying to wake Tim up and was like licking Tim's head. And like, we were like, that's a good sign. It's something he hadn't done in a while. We were like, oh, that must be feeling good and moving in the right direction. And just, our vet has been wonderful. Was at AHVMA this, past week. And so she's been like texting me constantly and giving me ideas of things to try and, getting updates. And when I had texted her last night and said he was doing zoomies around the house, and I was like, I'm almost crying. And she's like, I'm almost crying.
Oh, it's so nice. I would love to go to the AHVMA. Maybe I'll go next year.
It's in Reno next year.
Oh, that's an interesting location. I've never been to Reno. So,
yeah, me either. My only reference is the Johnny Cash song.
My only reference is the Bunny Ranch.
Is that where that is? I didn't even know.
I actually don't know, but for some reason I thought it was in Reno. And so that's what I first thought was there was that show on cable.
Yeah, I remember that show. Yeah.
But it's like, but yeah, I've never been to Reno. I hear it's beautiful, because I think Lake Tahoe is either in or next to Reno or something like that.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Who knows? But I do want to go. Well, congratulations on fixing your dog. I hope.
We hope.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. We hope. It was just interesting to me that detoxing is something that came up like from multiple places, and then it's the detoxing product that seemed to help work. So
I think it's fascinating that not the veterinarian community, but the medical community is kind of split on the topic of detoxing. Because if you look it up for humans, some people say, well, your body naturally detoxes. So all of these products out there that you can get on the shelves and in supplement stores, they're not really doing anything for you. Or they say, if you're going to detox, don't buy all these products. You just basically cut sugar out of your diet, or you stop eating this way, or, cut all the processed foods out of your diet. Or I know one person, she would make this fruit smoothie and drink that once a day for 3 months. And she did it once a year, and that was her detox. And so it's just like, there's so much, I imagine misinformation about detoxing, but then there's so much, because there's so many things like garlic promotes a natural detox. Milk thistle promotes a natural detox. There's all of these products or foods, whole foods that promote a natural detox, that it would be interesting to learn what exactly do they mean? Like, because it's interesting that your dog's body wasn't able to shift and correct on its own. So he needed additional help to do that. And maybe he was trying to do some of it by eating the grass.
Right.
And it would be interesting to know, like, are there different types of detoxes, and what exactly is that product doing for your dog and it'll be interesting to see what his eyes look like in like 2 months.
Yeah.
Like to compare.
Yeah. I have like a whole folder now.
Yeah.
Like
it would be cool to just keep track of that. You should put that in your journal.
Yeah.
An eye chart because, or just have a reminder, look at the eyes and see where things are. Because I do think it's hard as hell to get a picture of the eyes.
Yes. He does not like that either.
But
even the treats involved.
I know, but if you can, it would be really cool.
So I will say the good news through all of this that has like helped keep me somewhat calm was that he had a good appetite through everything. He always wanted to eat. He was pooping pretty normally and regularly. He was maybe more on the constipated end of things. We had added in some pumpkin with all of this, but he was on a normal schedule at least, and he had never vomited or regurgitated anything either. And so I was at least like, that was like helping keeping me a little bit sane. Like something's wrong, but at least like these things are still like relatively normal.
Yeah.
But it's just, he just looked so uncomfortable all the time, so miserable. He would have a hard time sleeping, which meant I had a hard time sleeping because he's on the bed. And, he would be like constantly moving around all night, and you could even just hear his stomach like, rawr, 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 and it's like, that's gotta be uncomfortable, dude. And then when I don't sleep, I get a little nutty, when I'm not getting like good nights of sleep. So anyway, it's like last night was like the best night ever of sleeping.
Well, I have a topic for you.
All right.
Because it came up today on my Facebook page and I found it really interesting. So I shared an article I wrote recently about the various raw feeding models. And what's interesting is that commercial raw isn't technically a raw feeding model, but I added it because a lot of people do just feed commercial. I'm
raising my hand.
Like Erin. But one model that I didn't put on there was the science-based model, which I remember when everyone was arguing back and forth, it's barf, it's prey. And then all of a sudden these science people came out and were just like, hey, we have a model too. That's not what they said, but that's kind of my cute little story of it. But what's interesting is I did not include that into my article because I don't know anything about it. In fact, I should say, one thing that I know is good is that a lot of these people started coming forward because they were looking at prey and they were looking at barf and they were like, this is not nutritionally complete. And this was sort of like the beginning of people starting to go to school and earn a certificate in canine nutrition. And I don't mean like online class. I mean, people were actually going back to school to gain this knowledge. And so they started sharing this information where they were breaking down these diets and saying, this isn't work. And that is kind of how I became familiar with groups like Raw Fed and Nerdy. There was a website, and I cannot remember the name of it. It just slipped my mind. But a woman, she created this huge calculator. It was a spreadsheet where you can plop in numbers and it'll help you better understand that. I think it was called the Rough Pack or something like that. But it was, this was back 2017, I think, where people started really talking about balance. And the reason why I didn't include it as a model is because I had such conflicted views on how people received the information and in some cases how the information was delivered, because it came across as you cannot possibly feed your dogs unless you have software or a spreadsheet or you use the both. Yes. Otherwise, you may as well not be feeding raw. You may as well just go back to feeding kibble. And I think that in some areas that exactly was that was the message that was being delivered. I read it on social media. But I think overall, especially now that we've had so much time go by and now we have things like the Animal Diet Formulator software, we have so many programs that you can choose from to learn more about feeding your dog and so many people who are meal formulators that I feel like the science-based model is no longer a model. It's basically you take all these other models and then you run it through the science to finalize what you need. But the models, to me, I looked at as this is how you get started. If you're brand new to raw feeding, in my perspective, you don't jump to software and spreadsheets. You may want to, but that's the thing that makes some people run screaming back to kibble. But you can sort of tackle 80-10-10 or 80-10-10 with some vegetables. Or, the Feed Real has a whole calculator where they go through all the different models. You tell them how you want to feed, and it breaks everything down as far as this is the amount of everything that you put into your dog's diet. And it's super easy. It's just like a little recipe. But if you want to continue feeding that way, you probably should take the time to really understand what you're feeding, why you're feeding it. Or at least that's how I feel. Anyway, long story short, I shared that article today, and someone asked me, why are there so many raw feeding models? Because shouldn't people just focus on basically the macro and micronutrients in their dog's diet, so on and so forth? And so I shared my theories as to why there are so many models. It started out with prey model. Then someone came and said, we need vegetables. There comes the barf model. And then someone said, I'm not able to feed that way. I can't feed whole raw. Then we got Frank and Prey, and then we got Frank and Barf. And then there's the rotational mono feeding group that came out of nowhere. And but there's all these different models of this is how, there's the ancestral diet. There's all these different models of how we're feeding. And it feels like each one came about because the model they were trying or whatever was available when they were feeding raw just wasn't something that they can buy into. So they adjusted it and started feeding a different way. And then people started talking about it and boom, we have a new model. So one of the reasons why I felt that people started looking at models rather than focusing on macro and micronutrients is because people didn't buy into the NRC guide. And I remember these conversations all the time in the groups where people were like, where did the information come from? Even I have those questions. Where did the information come from? When was the last time this guide was updated? How do we know what's accurate, what's not accurate? Where does the information come from? What were the dogs? How many dogs were involved in the feeding trial or whatever was fed to come up with these top and low levels of various nutrients? And I remember being told that the AFCO was based on the NRC, and both of them were based on feeding trials of dogs to kibble. And so you shouldn't follow them because we're feeding raw and it's just a completely different diet. It's more bioavailable. Just everything that our dog needs on a raw diet is completely different. I was wrong. Or whoever told me that was wrong. So someone sent me this, and now this is from the apco.org site, but I don't see why they would put this out there. But it says, so this is a committee on animal nutrition. It says many of the NRC minimum nutrient requirements are based on research with purified diets and or highly bioavailable nutrient sources that are not practical to use in commercial dog and cat foods. So it kind of sounds like some of the information from the NRC and AFCO may be based on fresh food. I mean, granted, that's just one sentence, but it makes me really want to know, really, where does this information come from? And I just found that really fascinating. I mean, because I gather that when it comes to NRC, FDF, AFCO, that's all we got. I mean, no one's going to do the study to test, 10,000 or even 1,000 raw fed dogs to figure out the minimums and the maximums. But it would be nice if we can have a better understanding of where the information we do have comes from, or at least I would. I'm sure there are people out there that know completely where it was. But that one really caught me off guard, that I'm not willing to say that none of the data comes from kibble-fed dogs, because I just have a hard time believing that anything related to these organizations wouldn't be to promote kibble, because like AFCO is all around kibble. So maybe there are things added to the diet, because this paragraph doesn't go into exactly what do they mean by bioavailable food, something that's not, doesn't make sense to put into actual pet food.
Right.
That doesn't tell us what it is. It could be anything, but it made me really interested in learning more about it. So now I'm going to deep dive into NRC and AFCO and find out where those numbers come from.
All right. I'm here for it.
I'm curious now.
I've always heard, or at least from going to these different conferences and things, that FEDIAF is like the more accurate one.
Mm-hmm. That's the option I choose when I'm playing around with the animal diet formulator software.
Okay.
It's because I've heard that FEDIAF is the more accurate one as well.
And that it's most recently updated and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought it was really interesting because one person said that they don't, well, I guess I shouldn't quote them because it's not kind of, I don't know. It was just a really interesting conversation, just the comments about NRC and AFCO, because to me, it's so confusing because we don't want anything balanced to AFCO, because AFCO is based on feeding trials with kibble-fed dogs, but AFCO also gets a lot of their data from the NRC. So it's like this wicked circle that makes my brain melt. And then I just don't care anymore. Which brings me to the reel that I posted this morning, where my dogs just decided to treat the house like it was a WWE wrestling champion, and they were just going crazy, and it was just insane. But I have come to the conclusion that I am not a 2.0 pet parent, or I don't really know what that means anymore. I used to think that because I fed raw, because, I do research into what my dog's needs, that's what made me a 2.0 pet parent. But some of the questions I get from people are so convoluted and complicated that I'm like, no, I'm probably a 1.25 pet parent. You're a 2.0 pet parent. And so you should not be asking me these questions, because that is way above my pay grade. But it's funny because I don't know how much of it is, wow, you are way overthinking this, or how much of it is, these are questions that we should definitely be asking. Why aren't we asking more of these questions? But it's just like, I'm just over the past few days, I've gotten so many just really intense, complicated questions where I was just like, I don't know. I don't think that way. One person asked me is there a site that she could use to determine like where the best places to buy canned oysters and the toxic loads and the different brands and things like that. And maybe I should have thought to ask a question like that, but I never did, because I never thought that anything like that existed. So I just never went there. But now that idea is in my head, it's like, I wonder if someone is testing all the canned oysters in this country to tell us what the toxic load is. Somehow I don't think the USDA cares, but maybe.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think anybody is, and I don't think there's certainly no quasi-governmental agency that cares.
Do you have a guest in the room?
I do. Neno just, as Tim would say, Neno just burst through the door like the Kool-Aid man. And he's all freaked out because I had moved some stuff and put it on top of his crate, and that's not usually there. And so that's very weird, and he's very concerned.
I love it when dogs, because when we used to not rearrange the garage, but just clean up the garage, I would open the door because the dogs go through the garage out a doggy door to their yard. Rodrigo would peek out and he'd look around and he'd just be like, nope, I'll hold it. Things have changed. I don't like this. It's a bad vibe in here. I'm not a fan. But, and I was about to say, speaking of which, and I'm not really speaking of which, but the other day I thought of you and I was going to message you. Johan came into the house and he goes, come outside. I have a surprise for you. And I got it in my head of, if your surprise for me is like, you want to show me how to properly sweep the deck or something, a new chore or something like that, it's like, I'm not in the mood for it. So, and he's like, just come outside. And I'm like, I really don't feel like playing this game. He's like, just come outside. He's like, you're going to feel so bad when you come outside. So I took my camera and filmed it because I was like, we're going to go outside. And if it's going to be some stupid thing, I'm going to have it on camera. And our neighbors moved and sold their house. So they gave us a bunch of stuff that they had. And one thing was shelving for my doggy condo. And I was so happy. And I was just like, I'm so sorry. I doubted you. And then I spent the next hour rearranging slightly my doggy condo to fit the new shelves. Oh my gosh. And so I thought of you because I was like, Erin would appreciate this.
Oh, you should have seen me like going through all my dog stuff over this last like week or two. Like, what do I have that I could use? By the way, I have 18,000 dog shampoos. And yeah, we only bathe our dogs like twice a year. Yeah. So, there's, short hair dogs like, or dog singular right now. But yeah, I'm like, I don't even know what to do with these 18,000 shampoos. And my vet's always like, oh, don't you have any like some kind of medication or some kind of formula? And I'm like, no, like I'm not a vet. But I did have some sucralfate from 2016, and she was like, I'll just get you some new ones. Like, okay.
I know. I decided no longer to buy shampoo because I don't bathe my dogs enough. Well, I mean, I do have some shampoo, but I don't bathe my dogs. And so there's so many things. My problem is that if something goes on sale, I want to stock up. And I guess in my world, in the zombie apocalypse, I'm going to need like tons of CBD treats. And I mean, I don't know what my problem is. So I've made a rule now that I have to have everything organized. I mean, it's not inventory, but it's organized so I can quickly look and see what is out there. And now that I have more shelves in the garage, I'm going to go through and grab all of the grooming products and put them out in the garage as well. So I know exactly what I have on hand because it's insane. I don't need all of that. I mean, I have shampoo bars and bottles of shampoo and then coat conditioners. And I have a coat toner. I don't even know what that means.
I don't either.
And I don't even know where it came. Someone gave it to me clearly because I don't think I would have purchased that. But who knows? Maybe I was in a place where I was like, I'm going to bathe the dogs once a month now. I don't know. But yeah, I have got to stop. And I even searched this weekend for more dinosaur toys.
Oh my God.
And could not find them, surprisingly. So I think the universe has decided I've had enough. But I have the dogs also. And I say the dogs because I don't want to seem like it's me. They also like donut toys. So I get donuts as well. So I did find 2 donuts and I brought those home. So no more. We're fine with toys, I guess. Whatever.
So, by the way, I do think that you are a 2.0 pet parent because I think anybody who questions the establishment in any sort of way, the hard line of like, you do the kibble and the monthly flea tick and, you ask the vet. And, I think my definition would be anybody who's like questioning and doing their own research and making an effort would categorize as 2.0. But I think there's some people who are a little over the top.
Then that's what they are. Maybe they're the 3.0 because some of the questions I get are so completely like, I'm just sitting here like, what are you asking me? And it's people take something that's seemingly very simple and make it insanely complicated. And it's not that they're not wrong. I mean, if you want to make things, I don't think their intent is to make it complicated. They just want to understand every single aspect of everything. So, and to me, because I don't need to know every single aspect of everything, I don't go into a nutritional panel and then Google every single thing I read. Right. I just look for red flags. If I see a red flag, then that's not the product for me. But there are people who actually do take the time to dive into every single nutrient. My idea, and maybe this is what it is this is a 3.0 pet parent, but the person that I was thinking of, honestly, was like Ronnie Lejeune of Perfectly Rawsome, and the people in the Raw Fed and Nerdy group. And just, I think of these people as, Bren of Dolce's Legacy, people who you can say, or, Destiny White is another one. Okay, I'm done putting out names. But the people who you will say, I'm going to add blank to my dog's diet. And they'll be like, oh, well, that's interesting. Have you considered blank and blank and blank? Like, if you add this, now you're going, like cod liver oil. If you start adding cod liver oil, you got to think of the vitamin A. So where else is your dog getting vitamin A? And are you pushing towards toxic levels? And how are you going to adjust for that? And because those are that's just not how I think. But I also don't add things to my dog's diet anymore. I used to when I was newer to raw feeding, but now I have my routine and have no desire to change it. And I'm sticking with it because that's what's working for my dogs. But I think it's interesting, the people who just like you listen to them talk and they can look at a recipe and tell you what's wrong with it, what needs to be added to it without running it through software. And they can be very spot on. You can double check their work with software and it's very spot on. That's sort of like the people that I think of. And then also like the people who are considering the light bulbs in their house and turn off their Wi-Fi at night. And just all the other things, I had someone who was shocked that I use Tide dish or laundry detergent. And it's like, yep, I do. Use dryer sheets too. I'm a monster. I am a monster. But
I do have dryer balls.
But it's just sort of like, I tried the natural laundry detergent and it does not clean my clothes. And I know this is not an opportunity. I'm not interested in anyone's homemade recipe for laundry detergent. I'm really not. Or products that you recommend. I'm really not. I'm sticking with the Tide, and I know that it's poisonous and dangerous, and it's probably the reason why all my dogs have died, and I accept that. But it's the people who don't use the Tide and don't use like Dawn dish soap, and who use what is it called, apple cider vinegar. Speaking of which. Okay, so I'm digging into this now and I cannot find any information on it. And sadly, in this day and age, when you can't find any information on it, it used to mean that it's not true. But today it means that the powers of be are trying to keep us in the dark about what the shady crap that they're doing.
The algorithm is hiding it.
Apple cider vinegar. So Bragg's apple cider vinegar apparently was purchased by an investment group, or maybe it's one of many brands purchased by an investment group. And now the apples that are being used are no longer organic apples.
Okay, so, that's not 100% true. Okay. They are still organic apples. It's just that the definition of what's allowed in organic also includes this like waxy coating on apples, where previously they did not use apples with that coating, and now they are. But that coating is still allowed under the rules of what's allowed to be organic. I read into this, yeah.
Okay, good. Because all I saw was like someone created a graphic, and not even a graphic. It was just white words on a black background, no link or anything. And I'm like, what? And then it was one of those where I turned on Facebook. And that was the first thing I saw. And before I could finish it, Facebook had sort of reset.
Right.
I'm scrolling up and down and I couldn't find it again. And I didn't remember where I saw it. And I was just like, and so I started Googling it and I couldn't find anything about it. And it had something to do with like Katy Perry. And I'm like, what does Katy Perry have to do with all of this?
I guess she's an investor in whatever investment group it is, but there's like tons of people who like are part of this private investment
as much, but it's like Katy Perry, is she trying to poison us with her fake apples? What's happening?
Yeah, I read that too, that like I guess maybe while still technically organic, it's not like maybe as high a quality as originally is kind of what I got out of it. And, it's up to you whether you want to make that choice. This is a vote with your dollars moment. Like, do you still want to support this company, or is there even a company out there that's sourcing better apples, or can you source your own apples and make your own apple cider? I mean, those are always options if you're,
And that's the hard part, is that I actually don't buy Bragg's. I buy a local companies. And I don't even think it's a local company. I think it's more like a Pacific Northwest product that's supposed to be organic and natural. But I've gotten to the point where half the time I don't believe that anything is organic or natural.
It is interesting because of what is allowed under the USDA regulations of what's organic. Some of it might be surprising.
Yeah. So, well, thanks. I'm glad I brought that up, because I was on my little phone Googling as fast as my thumbs would allow me and couldn't find nothing. And was just like, I don't understand. Is it dangerous? Should we not be using it?
Well, it's funny. There's an article about this when you Google it from January of 2023. So I guess this must be one of those things that like makes its rounds every couple months. So I'll put a link in the show notes.
I just thought it was funny because of the Katy Perry. I mean,
yes, yeah.
I mean, it's like, I don't really know anything about Katy Perry except for, like her music when she first came out and that she's on the Idol show. Otherwise, I don't follow.
Oh, is she on that? I don't even know.
American Idol. Yeah, she's one of the American Idol people. And so that's what I know about her. So I don't know if she's hated or beloved or anything like that. I was just like, do people not like her? And is that why? Because it's sort of like, did they go through like the investors and then they were like, oh, Katy Perry. And then that became the lead story. It's like. Absolutely.
I bet you that's absolutely what happened.
Because it was just so bizarre and I was so confused. And I basically spent 30 minutes trying to dive into the rabbit hole. I could not find a hole to dive into because nothing was, it was just not, nothing was really out there. I wasn't using my words very well. And so Google didn't know what I wanted to know, because Google just kept saying, are you talking about app? I just kept going, do you want me to ask you this or that? And I was just like, never mind, I'll leave you alone. It's fine.
So I'm having total FOMO because of everything going on with Neno. I'm not going out to the Feed Real Summit this weekend, and I'm super bummed to be missing you guys, but he's got some appointments and other things coming up that I just couldn't miss. And I hope you guys have a great time, and I can't wait to hear.
It'll be boring, and it'll be boring and dreary, and the weather is going to be horrible. I'm sure that the hotel will be either way too hot or way too cold. The sheets will be dry and itchy.
Scratchy, yeah.
Yeah, the food will just be sandwiches and chips and the little tiny chip bags for little kids, not the ones.
Thank you for trying to make me feel better.
It'll be baked Lays instead of the regular Lays, so we can all feel like we're being healthy.
I'm sure it's going to be fabulous. I trust Ruby to put on a top-notch event. No baked Lays.
Every time I take a picture, I'll look miserable in it. I'll just be rolling my eyes like, oh. Just be like doing this and scrunching up my face. Thumbs down. And that's what I'll do all of that for you so you don't feel bad. And then you'll be like, whoo, I dodged a bullet.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. I'm super bummed about missing it. I've never been to San Diego. I've never gotten to see you in person. I thought we were.
I know. That was going to be our first time. I was planning on standing on stools next to you, so we're the same height.
Well, next week we'll hear all about it.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It's weird. It's like I'm going to basically fly down and then fly right back, because to me it's going to be a really I'm going down Thursday night and I'm coming back first thing Sunday morning. As long as no flights are delayed, I'll be good to go.
Cross my fingers for you.
Because this is like the worst time of year for me accounting wise.
Oh.
Because I'm getting ready for budget season and getting ready for year end. So it's just like, so I'm working like till 10, 11 o'clock at night, every night for the next few weeks while I just so this will be a nice break from that, but I'll also be partly on edge because it's just like, oh my God, I have so much to do.
Yeah.
So there you go. Well, it was wonderful talking to you. And I'm so glad Neno is feeling better. I hope he continues to just improve. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the detox.
Yeah, I am too. I'm hoping that we keep trending in the right direction. All right, until next week.
Talk to you later.